and welcome back to our final session of the day of the December Digital Health Virtual Program. This final session is going to be a discussion around infrastructure that helps tell the entire patient story with AI. We would like to once again thank our friends at Canon Medical for their support of not only this session, but to the program overall. With that said, I would love to introduce our senior editor here at Healthcare Innovation, David Raths, who will be moderating this discussion. David, welcome.
Thanks, Matt. I'm joined today by Larry Sitka, who's Vice President and Chief Strategy Information Officer for Enterprise Applications at Canon, to talk a little bit about the future of AI in the healthcare workflow of the future. Welcome, Larry. Before we get started, maybe you could talk a little bit about your role at Canon and some of the experience you bring to that role.
Sure. Thank you very much, by the way, for inviting me here. These are obviously a pleasurable thing for me to do, specifically as I age, healthcare becomes more and more important. So it's not just a job; it's personal for me, right? I'm a patient too. So my primary background is a developer. I did a couple of I've been in the medical imaging space for roughly 32 years now, primarily developing a lot of applications, created my own company, sold my own company, and then very much focused on what I'll say is innovation. So at Canon, my primary role, Jim tells me, vision, right? Jim is the CEO, Jim says, just keep us 3 to 5 years ahead, right? Tell us what needs to come. So that is my primary focus. Specifically now, I've taken a large interest inside of AI.
Well, let's get started then. What do you see as the impact of AI in healthcare IT, specifically with data and image management?
It's like the start of a new evolution in my head. We're finally getting to a point where we're moving from human-based driven interfaces to machine and clinical driven machine and data driven interfaces. So once it's accepted, it will be huge. And let me be a bit descriptive of that. So there's a lot of pushback, and it's very common, right, for people to say no to technology that they actually just don't understand or they're fearful of. And I would rather approach AI not from job removal, but from operational assistance. So very specifically, I call it additional information or automated information. And it's collecting information to inform the physician of something that they're completely unaware of, but yet has occurred. So that operational efficiency, it's not artificial. It's really, an automation assistance. And with that acceptance, I believe it'll become greatly adopted, across. The other thing, AI is actually going to allow us to, if you take a step back and you think of what happened in the financial industry, when the financial industry moved from human-driven, paper-driven environments into electronic environments. I remember when I had my first brokerage account, you had to do a trade. It'd take 3 to 5 days to settle out that trade. When I switched from one financial provider to another, they would export or print all of my documents, transfer everything through the Fed, and then go re-import them. That's what we do for patients today with CDs and sharing of information, or we just repeat it all. If you think about a financial transaction today, it's done sub-second. That's where healthcare is going. So the ability to actually take on this, what I'll say, single longitudinal view of a healthcare portfolio, right? My healthcare portfolio. I also see AI, being effective in terms of, there's 2 types of algorithms, right? There's the autonomous algorithm and then the semi-autonomous. Autonomous meaning it runs, you get a result, and it's done. Semi-autonomous meaning there's an interactive approach with a radiologist or with a cardiologist or some physician, meaning you have the ability to, once you get a result, they may want to tune something and then reapprove it. Or if I even would stretch a bit further, having just a general physician be able to order an AI-based panel. So in other words, if I walk in on the weekend and I present with belly pain, I did get an ultrasound, I get a CT, I get a diagnosis, and I walk out, I do a follow-up with my physician. If I actually see that physician, he may or she may want to actually go back and order what I'll call an AI panel. So not just one algorithm, but a set of algorithms pertinent to a clinical workflow. So for example, like a chest x-ray, right? Run 100 plus algorithms on that chest x-ray, on that chest CT, run 100 plus algorithms on that chest CT. That will allow the acceptance of AI because it'll be there for assistance. Now, if I take it a bit further then, and if we split those algorithms up, there are two types of algorithms on top of it, right? The real-time algorithms, meaning when data is coming in, an algorithm is run and a result is produced. And then there's the mining algorithms. Those algorithms actually have the ability to receive information from the real-time algorithms and then give the feedback loop into, shall I say, other AI algorithms, thus the learning machine, as what ONC is, presenting.
Like the learning health system, yeah.
That is absolutely correct.
Right. So what advice do you have for health system leaders who know AI is coming, but need to start thinking through a successful business case?
So what I would actually like, not only healthcare providers, but developers, vendors themselves, is to be selfish. You are a patient, right? And as I age, like I said, I'm getting more and more selfish. I'm getting more concerned about how am I going to manage my healthcare portfolio as I go forward. And if you take that approach and say, if I'm going to be a user of this, how's it going to allow me to adopt? That's what I think the providers need to do on behalf of the patients. Put themselves in their shoes to understand how we move from, because today the US, it's a great place to be when you're sick, but it's a really bad place to be when you're not. And if I can explain just a bit. If I look at other countries outside the US, they're very proactive with healthcare. Genetics, genomics, liquid biopsies, and then linking all that information together for a proactive view of the patient. We don't do that here. We wait till we get sick. And then once we're sick, sometimes it's too damn late. And that can happen. If we can take that approach, we'll now start to leverage AI, and we'll actually start to see that those AI algorithms do a lot of that collection and isolation of information and what I'll call semantical perception of the data. Because typically all we focus on is taking data in, persisting it, and giving a diagnosis, and then it's gone.
So
we can't take that approach.
This will help allow people to see more of a full patient story.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay. How can AI support imaging systems, especially with the growing demands on radiologists? So
those imaging systems, in essence, you'd think they'd be getting easier and simpler. Unfortunately, they're not. The images are getting bigger. The number of images are getting greater. The physician is still focused on one single study, but now rather than look at one image, they're looking at tens of thousands of images, possibly all in collation, right? To find out, an added result. AI can assist in, shall I say, narrowing down some of the findings. And again, I'll approach AI with, it's there to assist and help the physician. It's automated assistance of information, right? It's additional information that's coming in, for the physician. So focus on the optimization, focus on, optimization inside of the workflows. So for example, if today in a radiology-based imaging environment, the traditional radiology pick list, right? Where the doctor picks a study and it opens. Why should they have to pick a study? Why can't I have in essence, a queue of studies that are in my work list that I'm going to read? So all I have to do is read, mark final, close, and when I close, the next one's there already. No picking, no queue fatigue, no delay.
People talk about security a lot. How do you ensure that patient data is stored securely with AI?
So this is one that gets a bit technical, but there's an organization called NIST, and it's NIST actually came up with a concept called Zero Trust Architecture. Traditional applications inside of healthcare are built with the concept that firewalls or external resources are going to protect me from being ransomed or being hacked. And unfortunately, that's what makes them so vulnerable. So if you can take an approach of zero trust, meaning protect from within while you're protecting from outside in, you're now protecting from inside out. So data at rest is encrypted.
Mm-hmm.
Data inside of databases and being worked on through calls, through services is encrypted. And then data in flight as it comes from the modality or externally is encrypted using just very off-the-shelf technology. We recently won an award from CLAS and Sensinet on our concept or our proposal for zero trust-based architectures that we have going forward. I think the final part to that then is being able to take the data when you encrypt it, remove the open file system from a human being type of access. So let me explain that again a bit differently. Today, for example, when you connect on a laptop inside of an organization, you have a very large disk that you're connecting to. Your laptop has a login and password, and it connects to that disk. Well, that's the breach, right? That's the opening that a lot of these, Trojan horses and ransomware attacks happen. Somebody gets loosey-goosey with their login and passwords, and pretty soon an application, a ransomware application has that. It will effectively start grabbing files off that disk, re-encrypting them, and putting them back out on the same storage platform, right? Without you even knowing it till you start to access the data. By that time, it's too late. We probably get calls from organizations once or twice a week about an organization that says our application was using a storage appliance and that storage appliance was ransomed. So what that means is we have to go back and come up with a recovery. So what we've decided to do is remove that open accessible file system from humans. And we use an S3 based container that's all encrypted. We take a complete series and study and we push it down in an S3 container. And then we read natively from that S3 container. So now there's no PHI exposure until we actually get into the application.
I see. Wow. Let me switch gears a little bit and ask, within a health system, who is it that's usually leading these kinds of efforts? Is it the chief information officer, chief medical information officer, chief medical officer, or some combination thereof?
So this is really important, by the way. And I think this is where a lot of the providers, they fail on a governance-based committee, or they don't have it, right? What is the governance? What is the organization looking like? Because it actually has to be a consortium. It must be technical-based IT. It must be clinical users, and you must have executive sponsorship that really understands, from the CTO to the CIO, maybe even the CMIO inside of that governance committee, so that you can effectively bring these strategies forward and understand that today, the way organizations do business, and when I say organizations, the providers do business, they're very siloed, right? They're very clinically focused. So you have radiology, you have cardiology, you have endoscopy, they're all separate. They come with their own application, their own infrastructure, proprietary-based interfaces to that. And if you take and consolidate those all together, flip them, I'll say horizontally now, and you have one access, one security model. Now you can go, and this is the switch from what I'll say from PACS to enterprise imaging. When you do that switch, you now enable AI. So now you have the ability, you have a centralized based location where all information is collected in a point, concept of VNA or VNAI type services. Inside that centralized point of access, you can now, in the traditional models, you want to either, most of the AI applications want data sent to it. We're taking a bit of a twist on that. We're saying, we're not going to send data to you. We're saying, we're going to bring your algorithm inside of our appliance and run it right on top the data. So if you have 10 algorithms, you have one copy of the data, all 10 algorithms access the data all simultaneously, all at once. You don't have to send data to 10 different locations, worry about PHI exposure, et cetera, going forward.
Okay. Well, you've spoken a little bit there about the importance of data governance, but are we also seeing an increase in the number of partnerships between organizations, maybe consortia or with vendors to get large enough data sets to do this kind of work? Are we seeing new types of partnerships develop?
Well, actually, that's the task that's being driven by ONC, right? Through a learning machine. We're actually taking not just a learning machine, but a learning health system proposed. So about, I don't know, 10 years ago, Dr. DeSalvo wrote a document that was a visionary document for the US. It was what will the US based ecosystem look like, the healthcare system look like in the year 2025. And inside of that, she set a set of goals of criteria. The first one was standardization, right? The second one is interoperability, which is what we're going through right now. The inside of that interoperability there's another one called secure and trusted framework. And what this means explicitly from the head of ONC and the head of CMS, if I'm on the East Coast and my health records are on the East Coast, and if I go to the West Coast and I'm visiting and I have a health event, my records are directly available to that healthcare provider on the West Coast, even though they reside over here. They're going to change some of the CMS reimbursements to actually assist and facilitate. So in other words, CMS used to pay for putting data in, right? So for every doctor you put data into an EMR, you got a reimbursement rate. Now the reimbursement's going to flip for sharing of information. So I see the HIEs that were created, the infrastructure that was laid in place for the HIEs will become the foundation for that sharing. We have a secure and trusted framework inside organizations, and we do sharing of some of the content, some of the information. But I think the organizations will have to evolve a bit towards blockchain to be able to share that content and do it securely so that they actually know I'm Larry Sitka and I'm the real Larry Sitka. I'm not, impersonating somebody, for example, and sharing of that data.
Okay. Is the issue of transparency about the efficiency of algorithms important? Are there some challenges around devising regulatory guardrails so that we can maximize the benefits of AI and machine learning and minimize any potential downsides?
Here's where I think, unfortunately, the US will be a bit left behind. The US the FDA specifically has focused on AI-based algorithms as being medical devices. So they're treating an algorithm with a finding as a medical device. If you go outside the US, you'll see an assistance service of being AI, the model that I'm describing, right? Additional information and be able to capture. You'll see, rather than focus on one finding in the chest x-ray, you'll see AI-based companies that'll return 125 findings on a single chest x-ray, or 190 findings on a chest CT. That's AI. And they're actively proving it outside the US. Not only does it add it'll increase efficiency significantly inside the physician base, it'll also increase the accuracy dramatically to the point where those physicians start to trust it. It narrows down their search criteria. So what I believe the FDA needs to do is take the assistance model, the clinical assistance, not clinical findings, but clinical assistance. Don't remove the radiologist. Don't remove the doctor. I don't want to do that. I want additional information, inside of what's already there, not only for exams that I do today, but exams that I've done in the past, and then look historically. The second construct is outside information, outside of imaging, the genetics and genomics, right? Linking genetics and genomic information directly for the physician, the radiologist, for example, knowing that an individual is BRCA1, BRCA2, right? If that's the case, they should take exceptional, more detailed views of a mammography study or any of those types of ancillary, findings that can be brought in, linking those two things together. And that's what's unfortunate in the US today. We use family history. We ask some questions. And you know what? A colleague of mine, he brought his daughter in she was having seizures. And in the same night, she gave the family history 3 different times. He doesn't even remember what he said the first time, the second time, or third time. And he noticed he was forgetting some information and adding some information. We shouldn't put it in the hands of humans, right? We need to document the data and make it available to the clinical staff, the care team that's treating, me or you or any of the patients.
Great. Well, Larry, this has been a fabulous conversation. You really are a visionary, because I feel like you are thinking 3 to 5 years out on all of these issues. So thank you for taking the time to talk about some of these topics.
I appreciate it.
Let's bring Matt back to wrap up.
Yes, thank you, David, and thank you, Larry. A great way to end the December Digital Health Virtual Program and the 2021 Digital Health Virtual Series. We will be back in January with the 2022 Digital Health Virtual Series. It will once again be a monthly series tackling specific topics within healthcare. On January 26th, we will kick off the 2022 series with the Interoperability Virtual Day. Stay tuned for a formal announcement coming next week. We'd like to once again thank our partners at Spectrum Enterprise and Canon Medical for all of their support of today's program. We wish you all a great and very safe holiday season and look forward to seeing you all next year at our virtual and in-person live events. Take care.